The Denver to Boston red-eye flight was supposed to be quiet. Most passengers on Flight 612 settled into their seats around 10 p.m., preparing for the 5-hour journey across the country. Families with small children clustered near the front, business travelers claimed the exit rows, and the back filled with budget passengers hoping to catch some sleep. Aaron sat in 22C, exhausted from a long week. He wanted nothing more than to close his eyes and wake up on the East Coast. But 20 minutes into the flight, something would happen that would keep him awake for the next 5 hours and haunt him for years after. Flight attendant Catherine Wells had worked for the airline for 11 years. She'd seen everything: drunk passengers, medical emergencies, turbulence that sent meal carts flying, even a birth at 30,000 feet. She prided herself on reading people, on knowing when someone needed help before they asked. Tonight felt different from the moment she stepped onto the plane. Call it intuition, call it experience, but something about this flight made her uneasy. She couldn't pinpoint what. Not yet. As passengers boarded, Catherine greeted each one with her trained smile, helping with luggage, answering questions. Then passenger 14B walked on. He was a thin man in his 40s, wearing a heavy coat despite the heated cabin. His eyes darted around constantly, never making eye contact. When Catherine offered to take his coat, he refused sharply. "I'm cold," he muttered, pushing past her. She watched him settle into his window seat, the coat bunched around him awkwardly. He placed a backpack under the seat in front of him, then immediately pulled it back onto his lap, clutching it like a lifeline. Catherine made a mental note but said nothing. Maybe he was a nervous flyer. Maybe he had valuables in the bag. She'd learned not to judge too quickly. The other passengers in row 14 seemed normal enough. A college student in 14A already asleep with headphones on, and seat 14C remained empty. Lucky guy in 14B would have extra space. Catherine continued her pre-flight duties, checking seatbelts, securing overhead bins, going through her routine. But her eyes kept drifting back to 14B. Captain Douglas Turner and First Officer Sarah Kim completed their pre-flight checklist in the cockpit. "Weather looks good all the way to Boston," Sarah reported, scanning the screens. Douglas nodded, his silver hair catching the instrument lights. This was his second-to-last flight before retirement. 34 years of flying, and he'd be done in 2 weeks. He wanted these final flights to be smooth, uneventful. Just clean takeoffs and landings, then home to his wife and grandkids. The universe, however, had different plans. The plane pushed back from the gate at exactly 10:23 p.m. Catherine and her fellow flight attendants demonstrated safety procedures while most passengers ignored them, buried in phones or magazines. Aaron watched Catherine instead of the demonstration. She seemed distracted, her eyes scanning the cabin repeatedly. Professional smile in place, but tension in her shoulders. Aaron had learned to read body language during his years observing people, and every signal told him this flight attendant was worried about something. But wait, here's what Catherine noticed. As the plane taxied toward the runway, the man in 14B started rocking slightly, back and forth, his grip on the backpack tightening. His lips moved soundlessly, as if he was talking to himself. The coat shifted, and Catherine caught a glimpse of what looked like wires running from the backpack, up under his jacket. Her breath caught. No, it couldn't be. She'd been through active shooter and threat training dozens of times, but it had always been theoretical. This was real. Catherine's mind raced. Protocol said to alert the captain immediately if she suspected a threat. But what if she was wrong? What if those weren't wires but headphone cords or medical equipment? She'd look paranoid, possibly racist for profiling a passenger. Her career could be damaged. But what if she was right and said nothing? She glanced around the cabin. Families sleeping. Elderly couples holding hands. A young woman who looked pregnant. Catherine made her decision. She walked casually toward the front, pressed the call button for the cockpit. "Captain, I need you to come back for a moment." Douglas frowned at the unusual request. "We're about to take off." Catherine's voice came back steady but insistent. "Sir, it's important." Douglas exchanged a look with Sarah, then unbuckled. "You have the plane." He stepped into the cabin. Catherine met him at the galley, her face pale. "Row 14, window seat. I think he might have a device." Douglas felt his stomach drop. "Are you certain?" Catherine shook her head. "No, but I saw wires and he's acting extremely suspicious. Rocking, mumbling, won't let go of his bag." Douglas had 40 seconds to make a decision. The plane was third in line for takeoff. If he aborted now, they'd have to return to the gate, evacuate the plane, call security. It would be a massive disruption. If Catherine was wrong, there would be lawsuits, investigations, possibly the end of both their careers. But if she was right and they took off, "Turn the plane around," he told her. Then he keyed his radio. "Tower, Flight 612 requesting return to gate. We have a possible security situation." Aaron felt the plane slow and turn. Confused murmurs rippled through the cabin. Why are we going back? Someone asked. Probably mechanical issue, another passenger suggested. Catherine and the other flight attendants moved through the cabin with forced calm, but Aaron saw Catherine's hands shaking as she checked overhead bins. Something was very wrong. He looked around, trying to spot what had spooked the crew. Then he saw the man in 14B, and his blood went cold. The man was sweating profusely now despite his cold. His rocking had become more pronounced. The backpack on his lap shifted, and Aaron caught a glimpse of what looked like a phone screen glowing inside, wires attached. Aaron's military training kicked in. He'd seen IEDs in Afghanistan. The setup looked disturbingly similar. He stood up carefully, making his way toward Catherine. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "row 14. I think you're right to be concerned." Catherine's eyes met his, and she saw understanding there. Someone else had noticed. She wasn't crazy. "Stay calm and stay back," she told Aaron. He nodded but didn't return to his seat. Instead, he positioned himself in the aisle with a clear view of 14B, ready to move if necessary. The man in 14B seemed to realize the plane had turned around. His head snapped up, eyes wide. He clutched the backpack tighter, and his mouth moved faster in silent words. Now here's where everything intensified. The plane reached the gate. Catherine could see security vehicles through the window, surrounding their aircraft. Airport police, federal agents, bomb squad. Her suspicions had triggered a full emergency response. If she was wrong, this was going to be a nightmare. But as she watched the man in 14B, she knew in her gut she wasn't wrong. The passenger in 14A, the college kid, woke up, pulled out his headphones. "Why'd we stop?" The man in 14B didn't answer, just stared straight ahead, rocking faster. Captain Douglas's voice came over the intercom, carefully controlled. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've returned to the gate for a security check. Please remain seated and calm. This is purely precautionary." But the armed officers now visible through the windows told a different story. Passengers began to panic. "What's happening? Are we in danger? I want off this plane." Catherine grabbed the microphone. "Everyone, please remain calm. Security personnel will board shortly to address the situation. For your safety, please stay in your seats." Aaron watched the man in 14B closely. The guy was muttering audibly now, and Aaron caught fragments. "Forgive me, they'll understand." Aaron's heart hammered. This was exactly the kind of talk suicide bombers used to psyche themselves up. He looked at Catherine, and she saw the confirmation in his eyes. She pressed the call button. "Captain, recommend you evacuate the cockpit and seal the door. The situation is escalating. You won't believe what happened next." The jetway connected to the aircraft. The door opened. But instead of security rushing in, a single man entered. He was tall, mid-50s, wearing casual clothes and a calm expression. He walked slowly down the aisle like he was taking a Sunday stroll. Catherine stepped forward to intercept him. "Sir, you can't be here. This is a security situation." The man showed her a badge. "FBI Behavioral Crisis Unit. My name is Agent Robert Chen. I'm here to talk to your passenger in 14B. Catherine stepped aside, stunned. Agent Chen walked calmly to row 14. The college kid scrambled out of his seat, rushing toward the back. Other nearby passengers leaned away, clearing space. Agent Chen sat down in seat 14C, right next to the suspect. He didn't look at the man, didn't acknowledge the backpack or the wires. He just sat there, looking straight ahead, hands folded in his lap. The cabin went absolutely silent. You could hear breathing, the hum of ventilation, nothing else. "My name's Robert," the agent said conversationally. "I used to be terrified of flying, had a panic attack my first time on a plane, right in this same kind of seat, thought I was dying." The man in 14B glanced at him, still rocking. "What do you want?" His voice was high, strained. Agent Chen shrugged. "Just thought you might want to talk. Sometimes it helps, you know, getting things off your chest before making big decisions." Aaron watched in amazement as the agent used the oldest negotiation tactic in the book, building rapport, but it was working. The man in 14B's rocking slowed slightly. "You don't know anything about me," he said. Agent Chen nodded. "You're right, I don't, but I know you're scared. I know you think this is the only option, and I know that whatever brought you to this moment, there's probably another way through it." "There isn't," the man said, tears now streaming down his face. "I lost everything. My job, my family, my house. I have nothing left. And they promised if I did this, my family would be taken care of. Insurance money, they said. They'd call me a hero." Agent Chen's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "Who promised you that? Because I can tell you right now, they lied. Your family won't get insurance money from this. They'll get a lifetime of trauma and guilt. But this is the detail that changes everything." The man in 14B started crying harder. "It doesn't matter. The device is already armed. Once I activated it at the gate, it started a countdown. I can't stop it even if I wanted to. Catherine's blood turned to ice. Agent Chen didn't move, but Aaron saw his hand slide slowly toward his pocket. The agent's voice remained conversational. "What's the timer set for?" The man checked the phone in the backpack. 6 minutes. 6 minutes. Catherine looked at the cabin full of passengers. The nearest exit was 30 feet away. Even if they started evacuating now, they'd never get everyone off in time. Children would die. Families would die because of one desperate man's decision. Agent Chen spoke calmly. 6 minutes. Okay, that's something to work with. Here's what I need you to do. Very slowly, show me the device. Don't make any sudden moves. Just open the backpack and let me see what we're dealing with. Aaron moved silently closer, positioning himself where he could grab the man if needed. Other passengers sensed something was happening. The cabin atmosphere shifted from confused to terrified. Catherine spoke softly into her microphone. "Captain, we have an active explosive device on board. Timer is counting down. Recommend full evacuation protocols." Douglas's voice came back immediately. "Beginning evacuation. All attendants, open all exits now." The doors burst open, slides deployed with loud pops. "Evacuate. Everyone move to the exits now. Leave everything. Go, go, go." Catherine and the other attendants shouted. Passengers scrambled from their seats, pushing toward exits, screaming, crying, chaos. But in row 14, Agent Chen sat motionless next to the bomber, both of them an island of calm in the storm. "Let me see it," Chen said again, gently. The man's hands shook as he opened the backpack. Inside was a mess of wires, a cell phone, and what looked like packets of plastic explosive. Chen studied it for 3 seconds, his face betraying no emotion. "Okay," he said. "This is actually good news. See this wire here? The red one? That's your detonator connection. If we disconnect that, the timer becomes irrelevant. The device won't fire." The man looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "Really?" Chen nodded. "But I need you to trust me. I need you to let me cut that wire." Aaron watched the bomber's internal struggle play across his face. Whatever organization had recruited him had clearly told him the device was foolproof, unstoppable. Now doubt crept in. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" the man asked. Agent Chen met his eyes. "You don't. You have to choose to trust me. Same way I'm choosing to trust that you're not a monster, just a man who got pushed too far and listened to the wrong people. Help me prove them wrong." Time slowed down. 4 minutes on the timer. The cabin was nearly empty now, just Catherine refusing to leave, Aaron standing ready to help, and a handful of passengers stuck in the evacuation jam at the rear exit. The man in 14B looked at the backpack, then at Agent Chen, then at the timer. 3 minutes 40 seconds. He made his decision. "Okay," he whispered, "do it." Agent Chen pulled a small multi-tool from his pocket, extracted wire cutters. His hands didn't shake as he reached into the backpack. Aaron held his breath. Catherine gripped the seat back so hard her knuckles turned white. Chen positioned the cutters on the red wire. "On 3, he said. 1, 2. He cut the wire. The timer kept counting. 3 minutes 20 seconds. Nothing changed. The man's eyes went wide with terror. "You said," Agent Chen interrupted, cutting a second wire, then a third. The phone screen flickered and died. The countdown stopped at 3 minutes 15 seconds. Silence. Then Chen spoke, and his voice had an edge now, the casual facade dropping. "It's done. Device is neutralized. But we're not finished. You're going to tell me everything. Who recruited you, how they contacted you, what they promised, every detail." He looked up at Catherine. "Get bomb disposal in here now." She ran for the exit, shouting for the squad waiting outside. Aaron slowly approached row 14. The man in 14B sat with his head in his hands, sobbing. All the tension, fear and desperation poured out of him. "I'm sorry," he kept saying. "I'm so sorry. They said it was the only way. I'm so sorry." Agent Chen put a hand on his shoulder, and his voice softened again. "I know you are, and now you're going to help us make sure no one else gets put in the position you were in. That's how you make this right." The bomb squad entered, carefully removing the device. Aaron finally exhaled, realizing he'd been holding his breath. Catherine stood at the exit, shaking uncontrollably as adrenaline faded. All passengers were off safely, 0 injuries, 0 casualties, because one flight attendant trusted her instincts, and one FBI agent knew how to talk a desperate man back from the edge. Later, after hours of questioning and statements, Aaron found Catherine sitting alone in the terminal. "You saved everyone," he told her. She shook her head. "I almost got everyone killed. What if I'd been wrong? What if he'd detonated out of panic when we turned around?" Aaron sat beside her. "But you weren't wrong, and you didn't hesitate when it mattered. That's courage." The investigation revealed the truth. The man in 14B, whose name was David Morrison, had been targeted by a domestic extremist group. They'd found him online in depression forums, groomed him over months, convinced him that killing himself and taking a plane down would make him a martyr and provide for his family. It was all lies.
The device wouldn't have paid insurance. His family would have been destroyed. The extremist group was just using him as a weapon. Agent Chen gave a press briefing the next day. Reporters asked how he'd stayed so calm defusing a bomb. He corrected them. "I didn't defuse a bomb. I talked to a human being. The device was secondary. The man was what mattered. Once I could connect with him, once he saw himself as a person again instead of a weapon, the bomb became irrelevant." People aren't born terrorists. They're made usually by predators who exploit their darkest moments. Catherine received a commendation from the airline and the TSA, but she told Aaron privately that she couldn't stop thinking about all the things that could have gone wrong. What if I hadn't noticed? What if I dismissed my gut feeling? What if Agent Chen hadn't been available? Aaron understood. That's the weight heroes carry. All the what-ifs. But you didn't let those stop you from acting. That's what separates people who make a difference from people who look away. David Morrison pleaded guilty to terrorism charges, but received a reduced sentence in exchange for cooperating with investigators. His testimony led to the arrest of 17 members of the extremist network that had radicalized him. At his sentencing, he addressed the court. "I was in so much pain that I couldn't see clearly anymore. They gave me a purpose, but it was a purpose built on hurting innocent people. Agent Chen gave me a different choice. He reminded me I was human. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn the mercy he showed me." Aaron flew again 2 weeks later, deliberately booking the same route, Denver to Boston. Different plane, different crew, but he needed to prove to himself he could do it. The flight was uneventful, boring even, but as they cruised at 35,000 feet, Aaron thought about Catherine Wells and her split-second decision to trust her instincts. He thought about Agent Chen sitting calmly next to a ticking bomb, choosing conversation over confrontation. He thought about David Morrison, who'd been given a second chance to choose life over death. That's justice, Aaron realized. Not just punishment for wrongdoing, but intervention before wrong becomes irreversible. Catherine hadn't waited for Morrison to act. She'd stopped him when he was still reachable, still savable. Agent Chen hadn't treated him as a monster to be eliminated, but as a human being to be reached. And Morrison, in his darkest hour, had found enough humanity left to accept that hand. 6 months later, Aaron received a letter from David Morrison, written from federal prison. It said, "I think about those passengers every day, the families I almost destroyed, the children who would have grown up without parents. I can't undo what I planned, but Agent Chen taught me something. Every moment is a chance to choose differently. I chose wrong for months, but in that last moment, I chose right. Thank you for being there, for helping create a space where I could make that choice." Aaron kept the letter. He thought about it whenever he faced decisions between easy and right, between looking away and stepping up. Catherine Wells had taught him that sometimes the smallest action, a simple observation and the courage to report it, can save hundreds of lives. Agent Chen had taught him that treating even potential enemies as human beings can de-escalate situations that force alone would only worsen. The extremist network that radicalized Morrison was dismantled, but others remained. The FBI created new protocols based on Chen's approach, training agents in crisis intervention and de-escalation.